Hey guys, Carl from Purple Moose Plays. Today I'm going to be taking a preview look at a prototype copy of the upcoming game, Stonesaga, from designers Brooke and Eddy, names you might recognize from Star Wars X-Wing and Legion, and publisher Oomm Games, who you might know from Stars of Ikarios or the upcoming Mythwind. This is going to be a sort of survival, adventure game, exploration kind of game in which you will find yourselves as sort of Stone Age people living in a new world, discovering the world, living and surviving through the trials and tribulations that are coming to you in this world. And there is a bit of a fantastical twist in there as well. As I mentioned, this is a prototype copy, which means I did get this from the publisher, but as this is a preview, I will do my best to show you how the game works and just give my own honest opinions on how I feel about the game thus far. Let's head down to the table to see exactly how this game plays out, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. For this preview playthrough of Stonesaga, I will be playing through sort of the first challenge, which is basically the first scenario of the prototype that I've been given, and I'm going to do so using two characters. There are some special sort of tweaks to the rules that you can use to play with a single character, but I played through the first time with two characters, and I feel like that's a good way to play through solo, so that's the way that I'm going to be doing it. So the first thing we need to do is set up our characters. Now, normally you are going to roll for stats and assign stats before choosing the sort of kind of character, which they call a mantle in this game. But because I've already played through once and used two of the mantles in the game, I do want to use the other two. So we are going to automatically start with these two mantles. This one here is the mantle of the Seeker, which according to the book says, a mantle connected with the hunt, finder of things hidden and obscured. The other mantle I'll be playing with in this playthrough is this one right here, and that's called the mantle of the Storyteller, which according to the book says, a mantle connected with your people's past, custodian of the lore you have accumulated. So basically I'm going to make sure that we're playing with these two mantles, but I will roll up a character and then decide which of the two I want to assign it to based on the stats that we've done or that we've gotten from that roll. So let's go ahead and set these up on the screen. And then to roll for characters, we're going to be using these cards. So you can name the character. In this case, I'm not going to name the character because I'm not very creative and I don't have a great name for them. So I will just leave that blank because I just want to show you how the game plays. We're going to check them off as being young. And the first thing we're going to do is roll 5 dice. And we're going to choose from those 5 dice 1 die to fill in a number in each of these 4 different skills, which will be might, dexterity, conviction, and awareness. All right, so rolling for the first character, 2, 2, 4, 4, 6. Now there is a rule that if you don't roll at least 13, you can re-roll, but we did roll at least 13, so I will obviously be taking 6, 4, 4, and 2, losing that 2, and we will be assigning those to either a storyteller type character or a sort of hunter-seeker type character. So I think in this case, judging by sort of the look of the character and the fact that they are a hunter-seeker, they should definitely be aware, they should definitely be dexterous. They might be strong, and the conviction is probably least important here. So I would say 6 on dexterity, 4 on awareness, 4 on might, and 2 on conviction. So we'll go ahead and fill those in again. As I said, checking off young. So we've got a 4 might, 6 dexterity, 2 conviction, and 4 awareness. And we will slot that into the player board in just a minute, but I want to finish the other one because we're not quite done setting up that character. Now rolling 5 dice again for my other character. We got 6, 3, 1, 2, 1, so that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, which is that threshold for a reroll, so we will try that again because 13 is going to be very low to start. All right, that looks much better. 6, 5, 4, 5. Clearly we get rid of our 2. Now, he looks pretty big and tough. He looks like he should be high conviction. He doesn't look very dexterous, so that will be the 4. I'm going to give him a 6 in conviction just so that we've got one person who's strong in conviction. And then like that. So 5, 4, 6, 5. Again, checking off young because they are new characters. And we've got 5, 4, 6, 5. Then the next thing we need to do to finish setting up our characters is we need to choose a trait. And the traits that we're allowed to choose from are cunning, intrepid, indomitable, resourceful, and wise. Well, I'd say that the storyteller is likely going to be wise. So I'll give them the wise trait. And then now that that's done, we will slot that in, and you can see those numbers show up right here in the player board. And then for our seeker, resourceful might be good for somebody who's out looking for things, but I'm actually going to use intrepid because I did have a resourceful character in the last game, and I'd like to switch things up a bit. So I'm going to make them intrepid. They are adventurous. They are out searching the world. So we'll give them the intrepid trait. And then because we are playing with 2 characters, each of our characters will have 5 health and 5 energy. So we're going to go ahead and place out 5 energy tokens on each character's board. Next, we need to set up our first terrain tray to sort of give us a place in the world to be. So we're going to place out 1 terrain tray. And in this case, we get to choose from sort of 2 different worlds or 2 different terrain sets, which are the Verdant Vale or the Skyreach Plateau. I did do my first playthrough with the Verdant Vale, so I am going to be playing through with the Skyreach Plateau. And to set up our first tray, we're going to first take the tile that says starting on the bottom, and we'll place that on the tray. And then we're going to give the rest of the tiles from that area a shuffle. And we're going to place 2 random tiles out with the sort of fog of war or obstructed side face up. So we're going to start like that. And we'll set those tiles off the screen up here. Actually, might as well just leave them right there in case we do any further exploring later. And then the 2 minis of our characters will get placed out at the starting space. Now these minis are 3D printed minis. And you might see that there's a little bit of defect. For example, this one, I don't know if it's focusing, hold on. This one here is missing her bow. It seems to have cracked off. And just little bits have chipped off just because these are, again, 3D printed minis. And you're not going to get the best quality of plastic because it is a little bit hard and brittle, and these were shipped to me. So I just wanted to show you that, again, everything is prototype quality. So these problems will all be fixed in the actual game, but both of those minis will start out here on that space. And then off to the side where you can't see them, I've got all of the different tokens that I need, just because it's going to take up a lot of space on screen if I put them on screen. But we've got all of the different resources we can get: water, food, all of these sort of crafting resources, our injury tokens, our illness tokens, our boost tokens, our lore tokens. You'll see how all of those come into play as we play. They don't really need to stay on the screen while we are playing. Next, we need to set up all of the decks of cards that we'll be using during gameplay. We've got the Knight card deck here. The instructions tell us at the beginning of the game to separate NB 1 through 5. I've already done that. And then simply to give the rest of these cards a shuffle. Next, our Discovery deck here. Again, giving those cards a good shuffle. Placing those out as well. Then we've got our cards for fishing, our cards for foraging. These are actions we can take in the game, which I will explain in a little bit. And then again, off screen, because we won't need them immediately, we've got this huge deck of cards for crafting and another smaller deck of cards for structures that can be built later on. And then finally, the last thing that needs to be set up before we can get into play is our challenge, which is basically the scenario that we're going to be playing through. And the first scenario we're looking at is Seeds on the Wind. And it says, under watch of the distant and icy moon, your people found a passage into a primordial vale, long sealed behind ancient frosts. To survive, you'll need to find sustenance and a refuge for your people for the harsh winter to come. So you'll see here it says vital goals through walls of ice. And then over here, it shows set-aside goals. Explore your surroundings, gather resources, process materials, and make tools. So we're going to place this one off to the side of the card, and these set-aside goals will simply be placed above this card for future usage. And once we've done that, we'll flip over the card. So we might as well go ahead and flip over the card while I'm here and show you what we've got. And it says campaign start. Set up a terrain tray with the starting hex and 2 randomly selected unexplored hexes, which I've already done down here. And then place your characters in the starting hex. We have, when you've completed through walls of ice, explore your surroundings, gather resources, process materials, and make tools. Read outcome 200 found in the codex. And the codex is a book that's going to have sort of different outcomes. This is what we're going to use when we're crafting things to see what we've crafted. There are other things that we can discover as we're playing that will be secrets that are hidden in the codex as well. It's sort of the storybook of the game, and we'll refer to it whenever the book says to. Also, down here you'll see there are different events that are triggered by activity, and I'll explain what that means once we get into gameplay. But basically, as we're playing through the game, the activity level will be slowly rising, and every time it hits one of these thresholds, we'll do whatever it says here on the card. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our events. The first event that is our starting event is this one here, through walls of ice. It says, as you enter the valley, you must study your surroundings in this strange new place to establish that your people can make a life here. So I need to follow these, and this is again sort of the tutorial. So it's going to walk you through all the different things we can do sort of on a basic turn. And it says I have to gather water at a river, fish at a river, forage at a forest or plains, mine at a chasm, and create a shelter at a cave. And it says this goal is completed when all of these above actions have been completed. So we'll set that there. And the other goals that we don't have yet that are just set aside are, again, explore your surroundings, gather resources, process materials, and make tools. And I'll explain what those are as soon as we sort of unlock them through play. And then the last thing that we do need to do is place out this activity dial and unrest dial. They're supposed to both be set to 0. Unfortunately, the prototype version of these starts at 1, so I can't actually set them to 0. So I'm just going to set them to sort of nothing and set them aside for now. I mentioned this is the activity level that's going to trigger those events I just talked about. And unrest is sort of a growing thing that will continue throughout your campaign and trigger things along the way. So let's set those off to the side over here. And if needed, we will add to those. Also, sorry, one more thing, this game, the prototype at least, does come with some really nice player aids that are going to walk us through all of the different actions, as well as a sort of walkthrough of what a normal round looks like, both day phase and night phase. And I'll use these to explain what we need to explain as we go into things. But for right now, I'm going to set those off to the side as well. But we will start by looking at the day phase, because the game is going to play out over a series of rounds, and each round we're going to have a day phase followed by a night phase. And at the end of the night phase, based on what happens during the night, our activity level will increase. And you'll see if we ever get to an activity level of 20, basically our game is going to immediately end. So we need to accomplish all of our goals before the activity level hits 20. And you'll see how that works as we play through the game. But we're first going to start each turn or each round with a day phase. And the day phase says, during the day phase, characters perform actions one at a time in any order. When each character has performed all the actions they wish to, the day phase ends. So this is a cooperative game, and we do get to take turns or do actions as we choose. There is no sort of turn order. We don't have to go back and forth. One character can do all of their actions, and another character then can do all of their actions, or we can mix them up as needed. And actions here, it says, include spend 1 energy to move into an explored hex, plus 1 energy if you're crossing any terrain features, and I'll explain what that means. And when we move, we resolve 1 discovery card. 2 energy to move into an unexplored hex, resolving a discovery card. 1 energy to process materials or craft items. 2 energies to degrade 1 injury or disease. And again, all of this is stuff I will explain as we get into it. There are also a ton of actions that aren't shown here that are triggered specifically by features on the map. And that's where we're going to start. Because the first thing this says that we need to do is through walls of ice. Number 1, gather water at a river. So on the space that you are standing, if you see any water features, means a river or a lake or wetlands, we can use 1 energy to gather 2 water. So in this case, because I know that this character is sort of my hunter-gatherer, I'm going to do my sort of slower actions or less meaningful actions with this character. That said, they both have pretty good stats, so it doesn't really change anything right now because they haven't gotten any special power for their mantles yet. But in any case, I'm going to spend 1 energy here to gather 2 water. So this character will get 2 water. Now, during this gameplay, anytime that we share a space together, which we currently do, at the start or the end of an action, we can freely trade things back and forth between us. So I am going to give 1 water to the other player, just so that when we need the water, each of us has some water. So we've completed the gather water at a river step. The next action says we need to fish at a river. So fishing is going to be our first sort of mini game in this game. And in order to fish, we do need to spend 2 energy. And again, here is our reference card for fishing. This tells me where I can fish. Again, lake, wetlands, or river. In this case, on my space, we see a river. It does say here, bonus, gain 1 additional water, mishap, suffer 1 minor injury because it's a river. And I'll explain what that means when we get into the fishing. But it also shows down here the cost will be 2 energy. And over here, it's going to explain exactly how to do a fishing activity. But in this case, I will walk you through it because it will be easier if I just show it to you rather than reading it off a card. So the first thing you're going to do when you take a fishing action, and we're going to do a fishing action with this character right here, means 2 energy are used. We're going to take the fishing deck and give it a good shuffle. And you're going to turn over the top card to see information that looks like this. And you'll see at this spot, or at this fishing location, we now have 3 different things that we can fish for. This one will give me 1 water. This one will give me 1 fish. And this one will give me 1 water and 1 of these rocks here. And these rocks, there are a variety of different kinds of rocks that we can use for crafting and other things later on. But we're going to place that card down like this. We're then going to take the next card as is, which show these sort of lines, different colored lines running through the water. And we're going to place it so that these 3 boxes line up with those 3 options that I just showed you. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to roll 4 dice, and I'm going to assign those dice into fields on this section, with the hopes that whatever the total of the dice are that I've assigned to that section will beat or be equal to the number shown here that's connected to the line that I'm placing on, plus whatever gets placed here. And each of these lines is going to end at something that's going to have maybe a plus number, a minus number, or a multiplier. And then some of them will say bonus or mishap. If it says bonus, remember, as I showed you before, because we're fishing at a river, if I successfully complete the bonus spot, I will get 1 additional water from this fishing. And the mishap, if I do not complete the mishap area at all, I'm going to suffer 1 minor injury. But any of the other ones that are not mishap, even if I don't complete them, it just means I don't get anything from that section. So let's go ahead and roll the 4 dice, and I'll walk you through how I'm going to assign those. I got a 6, a 1, a 1, and a 2, which is pretty bad. We don't have any way of manipulating the dice right now. There are ways in the future if we craft some kind of item that might help us do that, but right now, unfortunately, we don't have any. Now, we've got a 6, a 1, and a 2. And I know that some of these might go up, some of them might be multiplied, one of them is going to be a mishap. I'm going to say I would really love to have fish. So I'm going to assign first a 1 and a 2 to this double box. This right here is a double box, means I can assign 2 dice here, 2 dice here, 2 dice here, standing up like that. And each of these smaller boxes is a single space, so only 1 die could be placed in either of those. But you'll see that some of the boxes have multiple lines crossing over. That means I can use that box to fish on either of those 2 lines. But it's worth mentioning that we can only fish on any line once per activity. So I'm going to place the 1 and the 2 in this spot, because that might be enough for a 3 if it doesn't go up at all. And I'm going to place the 6 in this spot right here, because that touches all 3 lines and at base is good enough to complete any of them, but will depend on what the multiplier, etc., is that comes out when we flip over this next card right now. So now I'm going to flip over this card and I will show you up close. This one says +1 and a mishap, +2, and this says +3 bonus. So we place that out like this. The +1 mishap is on the 4. The +2 is on the red line, which is 5. And the +3 is on the 3, which is also a bonus, which would get me an extra water if I take it. Now, unfortunately, this 3 is not good enough for this 3 because that 3 is now a +3, which makes it a 6. But 3 + 3 is 6, which is fine. That 6 is enough. 4 + 1 is 5, which is enough. That 6 is enough. 5 + 2 is 7. I can't do that. So right now, these 2 dice are useless because they're not enough to do anything. And this one can activate a single line. And I can choose to either activate the 3 + 3 to get a fish plus the bonus water, so 1 fish and 1 water, or activate it on this 4 + 1 to get a water and a rock and not take the mishap. Because if I take the mishap, I'm going to get, as I said, 1 minor injury. But in this case, I'd love to have the food, so I'm going to take the fish and the water anyway. And we will have to take the mishap, which means we're going to place one of these minor illness tokens on this health track. And the way the health track it works is every time we take a minor injury, a major injury, minor illness or major illness, again, here's minor illness, sorry, I should have been an injury. Minor injury, each time we take a new one, we will place one over all 5. If they are all completed or all filled in, another player will have to go to my area to sort of heal me, to bring me back to active status again. But also during the night phase, we will have the ability that if we drink water and eat food, we can degrade one. So if it's major, we'd flip it to minor, or if it's minor, we can remove it completely. And that is one of the reasons we need water and food. Also, water and food will each on their own, 1 per night round, allow me to refresh 1 energy. Because during the night round, I'm normally going to refresh 2, but if I eat a water, I can have a third. Sorry, drink a water, I can have a third. And if I eat food, I can have a 4th energy. And again, if I have water and food, I get to heal 1 sort of level of injury or illness. Also, if I don't have water or food, I will take 1 minor injury. So I want to make sure that I always have one or the other. And in this case, now I have water and food here and just water over here. So that's the end of that fishing action. So go ahead and clean up the fishing cards. And next it says we need to forage at a forest or plains. They are both pretty good at hunting and dexterity, so I'm not too worried there. And I know next I'm going to go mining, which doesn't really mean much as far as needing to have energy, but that's okay. We will go ahead and forage with our hunter, because it makes sense to me. And foraging, again, has its own card. And a couple things first. It says, first, out of plains, I can perform the forage action. And you'll see here, we can see some sort of wheat-looking coloration on the tile. Those are plains, so if I ever see that, I can go hunting or go foraging, which I'm doing now. And you'll see here down at the bottom that it does cost 2 energy, which I've already spent. And this card is going to explain exactly how it works. I might refer to that depending on how this plays out, but otherwise it's, again, easier for me just to explain how this will work. We're going to start by taking this forage deck, giving it a shuffle, and from that deck we will draw 2 cards. And then from those 2 cards, we're going to be able to choose one of those cards to take into our sort of foraging tableau. And we're going to be looking for a couple of things. Trees are going to get us wood resource. These sort of grains here are going to give us a grain resource. These red plant-looking things will give us roots. And then you might also see other things buried inside of things. The river here will give us water. And then anything that you see attached to things, like for example, this little stone that's buried in the ground, if we took the grain, we'd also get that stone. This fish here, if we took the water, we'd also get the fish. And the way that that works is anything in the foreground we can take. But anything in the midground or in the background, we can only take if it matches either something that's already in the foreground. So for example, if I had this card, I could also take these roots here. Or if we have this sort of animal trail, this animal trail allows us to freely move to the next level. So if I had this, I could take the water in this card because I'm getting to that sort of midground using this trail. You'll also see there are these little critters over here that we can sort of hunt for resources or food. But then there's also these predators over here that are sort of looking to get us. And the way that the predator is going to work is this. If I take this predator card, and on the next turn of this forage action, I draw another predator card, even if I draw a predator card and a non-predator card, I must take the predator card. And if there are more than one predator card, I must choose the predator card that brings the predator closer to me. And if that predator is ever at the bottom of the card in a card that I've put into my tableau, I'm required to fight against that predator. And those predators are really, really strong. They do get you quite a bit of resource. I can show you here. When we fight the predator, we can try to fight it to get 2 meat, teeth, shell, and tendons, but they are going to be really hard to defeat, especially without any weapons. Or we can try and run away, which means we either run away or we get hurt. And again, these little guys we can hunt to get 1 meat per little guy that we see on the board, 1 bone, and 1 hide. Otherwise, we are collecting resources, and as I said, we might find some bonus things connected to what we're looking for. So I want to avoid the predator, so I'm going to avoid that card right now, and I will take this card and add it here to my tableau. And then we're going to take that other card and we're going to shuffle it back into the deck. And when we do a forage action, we will always have to do this twice. And then after we've done it twice, we can push on to do more, but we can never stop before this second forage action. Also, it's worth mentioning that while we're foraging, we can only ever bring back 3 of any resource, means wood or roots or grains or those big resources that are repeated on the card. But these sort of extra bonus things don't have limits like that. Now, both of these have a predator. Means if I push again, there's a likelihood that a predator might be in the front row. There is only one card that has a predator in the front row, but there's a possibility of that happening. Now, let's take a look at the card I already have. There's a tree in the background, and this one has a tree in the foreground and a pathway in the middle. So if I took this, I could get 1, 2 trees. Also, this has 2 grain in the front, and this one has a grain in the front. So if I took those, I'd get 3 grain plus that stone plus that feather. Not a bad idea. Same thing over here, we could get a grain and another grain here. And it looks like 2 stones there and 1 stone here, which would be not so bad. But wood is not a bad thing to have in the future. Grains are only good, they are food, but they are only good if we have some kind of tool to process the grains, and currently we don't have that. So I'm going to take this second card here. And, do I want to push my luck? There's a very slim chance. There's still a lot of cards in this deck, and only one of them is going to hurt me. I'm going to push on one more time just so we can see what happens. I'd love to be able to get a 3rd wood, and I'd love to find some trees that have some bonuses attached to them. So we're going to take 2 cards. We get lucky because none of these have the predator in the front row. This one doesn't have any trees. This one does. So I'm going to take this one for sure. And I will stop there. Again, because we have a pathway down here, I can get to the back row. So here we've got another tree in the front. And this tree in the back, you can see, I hope, has vines wrapped around it. Which means if I take wood now, I'm going to get 3 wood because that's maximum, even though we have 4 trees. And I will get the vine, or fiber they call it, from that tree. So let's stop there and let's get our resources. So again, I am aiming for trees. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 trees, but I can only ever have 3 of a resource. So we will take 3 wood. And that tree has a vine on it, so I will get 1 fiber resource. So again, here we're going to be taking 3 wood and 1 vine or fiber. And the way these are going to work is a couple things I want to show you while we're here. Number 1, Each of these things is now sort of raw materials. And you'll see in the bottom right corner, there's something printed on each of these that's going to tell me what I can do to process that into something else. So if I had fire and some kind of sharp edge, I could turn the wood into sort of carved, pointy wood. And same thing if I had a sharp edge of some kind, I can sort of treat that vine to make it into more of a normal fibrous rope kind of thing. You'll also see these markings around the edge. We'll talk about those in a little bit later when we do the crafting action, but we're going to be using those symbols to pair things up in order to craft items later on. But for right now, I'm just going to take these 4 items and we're going to place them in our bag. Like that. And with that, our forage action is done, so we can clean up these cards and place them back into our forage deck. And the next thing on this card that it says we need to do is mine at a chasm. And I hope you can see on here, it's not immediately clear, but on this starting tile, down here at the bottom, this red thing is actually like a cliff edge down. That is a chasm. So we are going to take a mining action at that chasm. And to do that again, we've got a reference card that can help us. Shows our cost again as 2 actions. And it says we can mine at a cave, a chasm, dried flats, moraine, or mountain. In this case, we are doing it at the chasm because that's what it says that we need to. And I'll show you here the 4 different stones that I've been talking about: riverstone, sunstone, cloudstone, and clay. But for how mining works, I will explain to you myself, but we do need to consult this first for setup. If we are mining at a chasm, we want to place 2 sunstone, 1 cloudstone, and 2 of the riverstone into a bag. And what that means is we've got a wide assortment of these different resources, and on the back are these sort of glyphs. And we're going to, at random, put them face down, mix them up, and I'm going to again place 2 sunstone, 1 cloudstone, and 2 riverstone into the bag. So I'll go ahead and do that. All right, so I've placed those different resources inside this bag. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out 1 to start, and then if I want to, I can go back in again and pull out a second one after that. And I'm allowed to, while I'm in here, sort of feel the shape of the tokens with my hands, because I hope you can see these are the 3 different tiles that are in the bag, and they all have a slightly different shape and sort of bumpy edge to them. So if I'm careful, I can figure out which one I'm taking out of the bag through feeling. But again, I don't know what that glyph is on the other side, and that glyph is basically an omen of some kind. And based on what it shows on the back side, it's going to trigger some kind of effect in addition to gaining the resource that I'm pulling out. And now currently, I'm not looking for any one specific resource because I don't have any sort of things that I'm looking for that use specific resources. Later on, when we start building structures in our outposts, different structures will use different materials. And also, once I start doing crafting and figuring out what different things create other different things, we might focus on certain resources in order to build certain things. But right now, we're new, we don't really know anything, so right now it doesn't matter to me which ones we get. But in future, I can sort of feel the edges to see what we're getting. So we take that bag, we reach in, and again, we're allowed to feel. I'm just going to pull at random right now. I feel like a big one right now. I think this is probably the blue moonstone, and sure enough it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip to the other side, and we see that there's a comet on this moonstone. So we're going to consult that card, our mining reference, and it says, if there's a comet, we're going to suffer 1 minor illness. However, it also says match effect underneath. And when we start each challenge, the challenge card has one of those symbols printed right here. And if we match that symbol, instead of doing what it normally would do, we would instead do the match effect. In this case, we don't match because that's a moon, and we pull the comet. And the comet again says we're going to suffer 1 minor illness. Sorry, I am mining with this character. I should have spent 2 energy to do that, and now he gets 1 minor illness. I wouldn't mind having more resources. We're not really in any danger health-wise right now, so I'm going to pull out 1 more. And I will hopefully find one that's a different shape. I do. I've got one of the river stones this time. And on the back of that, now we've got this sun symbol. Sun, again, does not match the moon on our challenge card. So we consult our card. And it says with a sun, we're going to lose 1 energy, which is a shame because now they go down 1 energy. But we now do collect 1 river stone and 1 moonstone. And again, here are our resource tokens, and you'll see that we need some kind of bashing tool to refine this one, and we need some kind of grinding tool to refine that one. So for now, we'll just place those into our bag. And then looking at the card again, step 5 says we have to create a shelter at a cave. And to create a shelter, we simply need to be at a cave, which we have right here. And then all we need to do is spend 1 energy, and we'll place a shelter token at that cave. So I'm going to spend this one because she has food, so she'll end up getting more energy back in the night phase. So this here is my shelter token, and we'll go ahead and place that on my tile right there. Again, they are both in that tile. And now, having completed all 5 of those steps, we have completed this goal card. And we will simply flip that over to the other side and read what it says. It says, while many plants and animals of the valley are strange to you, you have found the basics of survival on your first day. Now night descends. Resolve the first night phase and then put the vital goal, explore your surroundings, into play. So this is finished. And now we enter our first night phase. And again, it's a very nice reference card that we can use to go through for our night phase. So first, the night phase, we're going to rest. Each player regains energy automatically. If you're only playing 2 characters, which we are, they'll each regain 2 energy automatically. So he will instantly get 2 energy, and she will also get 2 energy. And then it says, for spending water, you get an energy. For spending food, you get an energy. And if you have fire or shelter, you get an energy. So I'm going to spend water for him and get 1 energy. Plus we are at a shelter, so he gets 1 energy. And then for her, I will spend 1 water to get an energy. We are at a shelter, so we get 1 energy. And again, I'm going to spend this food. Now before I spend the food, I just want to explain something to you. If I don't eat this food right now in the night phase, at the end of the night phase, it's going to degrade into this sort of spoiled side. The spoiled side is not going to hurt you. You can still eat it in the following round, but in the following night phase, if you still don't eat it, it's going to completely spoil, and then you can't eat it at all. But in this case, I am going to eat it right now, so we can fill up her energy. Then we've got some sort of special things that happen. If you filled your track, which we did for both of them, we're going to get a minor boost. I'll show you what that means in just a second. Then, if you spent food and water, which she did, we're going to degrade 1 disease. And if we didn't spend anything, we get an injury. They both had water, so we're okay. She got food and water, so she's going to degrade 1 minor injury. Now, because this is minor, it goes away. If it was major, it would have simply flipped to the minor side, but that's gone. And now, because they both filled up back to 5, they're both going to get a minor boost. The minor boosts are simply these little tokens right here. Minor is 1, major is 2. So they're each going to get one of these 1s, and basically I'm going to slot that into one of their skills, and it will increase it by 1 moving forward. So right now I don't really know what skills are important because I haven't had to test any skills yet. But I'm going to aim sort of at their middling skills. He doesn't really have middling skill. His 4 is the lowest he's got, so I might as well boost that to a 5. I don't really need to boost her 2. He's already got a 6 there, so I'm going to boost her awareness up to 5. Next, moving through this night phase list, degrade food, that's what I just mentioned. If I had any spoiling food, means fish, meat, mushrooms, or roots, they would instantly flip to the degraded side or get discarded if they were already degraded. Next, we're going to tend fire. If we did have a fire in our space, we would have to spend 1 wood to keep the fire burning. We don't have any fire, so we'll skip that now. Next is night actions. If we have any special cards or abilities that have night actions on them, we can use them then. Then we're going to reconcile our inventory. Now you'll see that each character has this bag, and right now we're okay, but this bag is actually recessed in the player board, and in order to keep any resources or any items that we have like this at the end of the night phase, we need to make sure that they all fit perfectly flat inside the bag. So there will be a sort of puzzle of fitting goods into our bag later on when we're holding more stuff. Then, finally, draw night cards. And this says for each hex that we've got one or more characters in, right now there's only one hex because we're both in the same hex, a character in that hex must resolve one night card, and then when that's done, the night phase ends. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first night card. And when we flip over the night card, the first thing we're going to check is a couple of things. First things we're going to check then, right? We've got danger and we've got group. Group means that all of the characters are going to be doing this event. If this said solo, then I would have to activate the card with the person who I was drawing this card with. So I should decide who the person is first. In this case, we got group, so we're okay. If this says challenger, that means that the person who draws this card or the character who draws this card can freely select one character to take this event. But right now it's group. The next thing we need to check to see is if we satisfy the condition printed on the card. Otherwise, we will discard and draw a new one. This says if anyone in your hex is diseased, choose one and resolve it. Well, we do have one minor illness here from our mining activity before. So we do have a diseased character, means we will go ahead and do this. And it says a vile odor awakens you from your slumber. Then I get to choose. The top one says, thankfully the sewage is contained in the waste pit, but I have to have a waste pit in this hex to choose the option. I don't have one of those. So it says the disease spreads. Each character in this hex suffers one minor injury or minor disease. So we're both going to get one minor illness token on our player boards. And then the other thing we're going to look at on this night card is the information that's printed down here. First we see activity +2. And then we see these two icons or these two omens, a star and a cloud. That means from now on, if we're mining or things that require omens, we're not going to be paying attention to the symbol that's on this card anymore, but instead we're going to be focused on these star and cloud symbols down here. So let me go ahead and add +2 to my activity counter, which is what this dial is here. So we're going to change that to a 2. And again, we know that when our activity gets to a 4, it's going to trigger this event. And if we get to a 20, like I said, we're instantly going to end the game regardless of what we've accomplished. Now, the goal card that we finished said that after we resolve the first night phase, we should put the vital goal, explore your surroundings, into play. So now we are going to activate this new goal card. And it says, as you enter the Vale, you must take stock of your surroundings in this strange new place. It says, I can use the explore action to move into and explore an adjacent unexplored hex by spending 2 energy. Then resolve a card from the discovery deck. After we've explored a 3rd hex, this will be completed. So right now we have 1. So when I finish exploring these 2 hexes, that will be completed. All right, so we do need to explore. And there's no real reason not to just go ahead and start exploring. We can figure out what to do next after we explore. Now, looking at some of the stuff that's showing through the clouds, we can see that there is a river here. So we could do some fishing over there. Over here, I can't really tell what's going on. There is definitely dry flats over here. So dry flats are going to let me do mining activities, and the river again is for fishing or collecting water. But yeah, you know what? I know for sure on this board where I am right now, there is no moraine, so we might as well explore that way just because it's unique. But either way, we're going to have to do both or extend our map. I'll explain that as well in just a minute. So we're going to use this guy because he's got some pretty big stats. And we're going to drop 2 energy to explore this tile. So the first thing we're going to do is flip over the tile. And then you'll see at the bottom of the tile, there is a number. So we have to situate the tile so that that number is pointing to the bottom. I do see a cave there. I do see some mountains there. I do see plains there. I do see chasms there. And I do see these dried flats there. There's a lot of good stuff on this. Also some wetlands. So this tile looks like we could pretty much do anything on it. There's also this spooky skull up here, which doesn't mean anything now, but there probably is a card or something that will do something related to that later on. So we're going to place that there, and then we're going to move our character into that spot. And doing so, we're going to take a discovery card. Discovery says this is a hazard card, disorientation. I get to choose one and resolve it. Despite your claims to the contrary, you are quite lost. So I can either test awareness or I can test conviction. His conviction's a little bit higher. It says if I had a map I could add to my awareness, I don't. +2 if I'm intrepid to my conviction, which is unfortunately, because their conviction's real low and they are intrepid, but anyway, they're not the one exploring, so it doesn't matter. Then I might as well test my conviction because it's slightly higher. So we're going to roll a die, and we're going to add that die roll. This is how we do a skill test. Roll one die, add that die roll to whatever skill we're testing. So we're going to test conviction, which is a 6. I will roll one die, and I get a 5, which is 11. So looking at our results, 11 is definitely 8+. It says your bullheadedness pays off with a discovery. Roll one die and gain. So we're going to roll a die again. I get a 3. And with a 3, it says I get 1 bone, which is pretty cool. Bones can be used for crafting later on. Just to show you, here is the bone. And that requires some kind of like chiseling tool and also a sharp edge tool in order to turn that into something nicer. But you can see, there are already icons around the edge, means even an untreated bone can still be used to craft things. So he gets that. And then we are going to want to explore again. And I would ultimately like them both to end up in the same location moving forward, because remember, we're triggering one night event for each person in a different, for each hex that contains a person. And more night events means more danger. So eventually I'd like to get them back. Plus, if we have that shelter, we do get more energy back at the night phase, so I would bring him back. To come back, you're going to spend 1 energy, plus an additional energy if you're crossing over some kind of feature. Unfortunately, these wetlands are blocking my way, so that would cost me 2 to get back in there. So let's wait and see, because I would also like to do some hunting potentially to get some food. We can easily get water wherever we are. So anyway, let me start by taking her and going this way, spending 2 energy. We flip over this tile and place the number at the bottom. Again, we've got plains. We've got that dried flat area. We've got a lake here, a river and some mountains and a chasm over here. So we'll place that down, and she moves into there. Now the nice thing is this dried flats is an open terrain feature, which means you can move through it without spending the additional 1 movement. So she can come back here for 1 energy, but she needs to complete her discovery card, which says, discovery, sinkhole. Resolve the following. As you walk across a seemingly flat patch of ground, it gives way, trapping your legs in a shallow hole. Test fight or strength to dig yourself free. Add +2 if you have an adds. I don't. So she's starting with a 4. We roll a 1 is a 5. So unfortunately it says the digging tires you out, lose 1 energy. So we lose 1 more energy. But we now have completed the goal, having explored our 3rd hex. 1, 2, 3 hexes. Although I'm not sure if that means there's a 3rd hex showing or I have explored 3 hexes. So I'm actually going to hold off on flipping that one. We're going to go 1 more round, and then we'll see how that plays out. Because I also would like to show you how to add another tray of terrain anyway, so we'll wait on that one. Instead, I am going to bring her back here, which gets her another discovery card, which says hazard, sudden slip. Resolve if your hex has a river or a lake, otherwise redraw. It does have a river. Wending your way along a ridge above the water, you lose your footing and plunge into the icy depths below. Test again, that's strength, +2 if you have clothing. I don't. So we start with a 4. I roll a 4, we get an 8. with an 8, 6 to 9. It's an arduous swim to shore, but you make it. Lose 1 energy. So she's done. And he's coming back, needs 2 so he can cross the wetlands. Comes back. He has to do another discovery card. Let's hope he doesn't lose that energy because I want him to get water so he doesn't get hurt this night. Mystery, whispering shrub. Resolve the following. You hear susurrations from the nearby bush. Could they be human voices? You may spend 2 lore and read outcome 235. Now, lore are tokens you can get from doing things or discovering things throughout the game. We don't have any, so I can't do that. Otherwise, test dexterity to approach quietly. Add +2 if you're cunning. We're not cunning, but my dexterity right now is a 5 because of this boost. Now, the way the boost works is as soon as I use it, it goes away. So we are starting at a 5. I roll a 3, which puts it at an 8. Unfortunately, we needed a 9 to trigger the next thing. So you approach, find nothing. Disturbed, you continue on your journey, lose 1 energy. That's going to be a problem. Now he doesn't have any water. He loses this boost. We're out of energy, so we go into the night phase. We each get 2 energy back to start. We each get an additional energy because of the shelter. She's going to spend a water to get 1 more energy. He has no water and food. So because he has no water and food, he is going to take 1 minor injury, which is not great because he's getting hurt. We need to start getting him water and food to get rid of some of those things. Then to finish the night phase, because we don't have anything else to do during this night phase, I'm going to take the next night card. Hold on, I didn't decide who was going to go, but since he's hurt, I would have definitely picked her. This one says Dream Solo, so she will need to do this on her own. Resolve if there's at least 1 unexplored hex. There aren't any unexplored hexes at the moment because we haven't looked to go further, so we will not resolve that. So then we draw again our next night card. It says Mystery Solo again. Resolve, we have to. Scratching under stone. A scratching noise wakes you. Listening in the darkness, the sound seems to be coming from the ground below. You must test awareness to find the source. Again, we don't have any lore to spend, or we could spend to add more success points. So we're starting at a 4. She gets a +1, so we are at 5, but that goes away. We roll a 1, of course. So we've got a 6, which is 1 to 8. It says you're unable to find the creatures and they spread disease in your camp. Each character in your hex gets 1 minor disease. See, this is one problem about staying together. We only resolve 1 event, but everybody's going to get hurt from it if something happens. So we each get 1 minor disease. Our new omen is the moon again. Also, +1 activity. So we are at 3. Remembering the first thing triggers at 4, which we don't have yet. And they are both getting 1 minor disease. So he needs to heal badly or he's going to get in trouble soon. All right then, entering the next phase, we do have to explore 1 more hex. This time I want to make sure that we have water and food though. So I'm going to go fishing with this guy over here. And we'll take our fishing action again. Remember, we spent 2 energy to do that. We'll flip over our first card. This time we've got an option of 6 for fish times 2, 3 for a fish, or 4 for 2 water. Those are big numbers. Sorry, that's 3 for fish, 4 for 2 water. We'll place out our map here like this. And roll our 4 dice. Come on, big numbers. 4, 6, 3, 1. All right, good. Then, 2 fish would be great to have. Water would be nice, but a fish, no, I want 2 fish. I really want to have 2 fish. Water we can get later. All right, so I'm going to put 6 and 4 on that black line like that, because 10 is pretty much guaranteeing me I get those double fish, and that way we'll each have food, and he can get some water from the river later. Then we'll each have water. I'm going to put this, that's interesting. I could put the 1 and 3 here. No, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm putting a 4 there. I'm going to put the 3 there. And this 1 is useless. I'll just stick it there. It's not going to do anything. The reason I do that is 9 is still probably good enough for that 6. If it's doubled, we're in trouble anyway. If it's +4, yeah, we're in trouble. This 4, if I put it there, could potentially be fish or water. No. Yes, that's all 3 of them. I think so. Yeah, let's do that and see what happens. We take our next card, and we get a +2, a 0, and a ×2. Of course, the ×2 bonus is on the fish at the top, the black one, which is horrible because there's no way I got a 12. +2 is on the red line, which we can't do either, but 3 + 0 is still 3, which a 4 does, means we do avoid the mishap. I do get 1 fish. And that is all we get from that fishing activity, which isn't great, but it's not the end of the world. Those go away. And then for his final energy, he is going to get water. So we'll get 2 water, and we'll give 1 to her. And now she is going to explore. Now to explore from this location, we're going to need another tray. And the way this works when adding a new tray is that we need to touch at least 2 edges of the existing tray, and it has to touch at least 1 edge of the tile where the person is exploring from. So I'm going to place this in like that. And we'll slide up a little bit just so we have some space. Then we populate that with 3 unexplored tiles. 1, 2, and 3 like that. Now each area does allow you to have 3 total trays. You'll see here that I've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. Only 3 could be placed because 2 is not going to fill another tray. But after we've explored 1 more tray of this sort of region, we could then explore the other region, the Verdant Vale, that I didn't explore in this game. So you can sort of continue growing the world into different types of regions as you play if you explore farther. And now she is exploring a new tile, so she needs 2 energy, and she can pick anything adjacent to where she is. I want to explore. I see some plains and I see some dry bed here. I see a lake over here. We've got lots of water. Let's come down here. Again, we put the number down at the bottom. Ooh, what's this? Another weird thing we see is a star. I don't know what that star is, but that's kind of cool. We've got plains, we've got a chasm, and we've got that sort of dry bed. But the nice thing is this dry bed is not a terrain that blocks the edge, but there is a chasm on the starting terrain, so there is still requiring 2 to cross it. We get here, we take a discovery card. Discovery, a faraway promise. It says resolve if your hex has a mountain and has at least 1 empty adjacent space. There is an empty adjacent space, but there is no mountain, so we can't resolve that. So we take the next one, which is Roaring Falls. Hazard. Resolve if your hex has a river or a ravine. This doesn't have either of those things. But checking the rule book, there is nothing marked as ravine. So I'm going to assume that ravine was a previous name for a chasm, in which case we do have one of those, and we will continue reading. It says you hear the rush of water and decide to follow it. And then it says test awareness to study your surroundings, +3 if you're resourceful. We're not. So we're testing awareness, which is a 4 + 5 is 9. So looking here, that gets me 8 to 11. You find a trickling stream full of vitalizing water. Gain 1 water and 1 minor boost to awareness. Okay, that's cool. Like that. In doing that, we have completed this goal. So let's flip that over and see what happens. It says, you found nourishment and shelter and awakened refreshed. You're ready to face your goals for the next day. Put the goal, gather resources into play. So we place that down here, and we will add the new goal, gather resources, which says, to thrive in this new place, you'll need to acquire resources beyond just food and water. Fortunately, this valley has many materials available, but you have to work to get them. You can gain materials from foraging, mining, and even sometimes from fishing. This goal is completed when the characters as a group have the following materials: 1 wood, 1 fiber, 1 sunstone, 1 cloudstone, 1 riverstone. Well, we've got 1 wood, we've got 1 fiber, we've got 1 cloudstone, we've got 1 riverstone, so we need 1 sunstone to complete this, which means we are going to have to go mining. But I want to come back home to be together for the night phase. We're going to travel by using 2 to go there, taking a discovery card. And it says, hazard, unexpected storm, resolve if you have a lake or dried flats. And looking at our current tile, there are no lakes or dried flats. So we'll draw again. And it says, mystery, strange rumble, resolve the following. A loud thrum shakes the valley, and you hold your ears as the sound seems to fill your mind. You may spend 2 lore and read the outcome 503. We don't have any lore. Otherwise, test your strength to steady yourself. Add +2 if you are attuned. We're not attuned. So we're testing strength. She's got a 4. We roll, a 6. Then, that's great. 4 + 6 is 10, means 9+. You fight off the vertigo, and we gain 1 lore. Cool. So now you can see, I don't know if this is going to zoom in well, but this here is a lore token. So we're going to give that to her. We might be able to use that later in one of these sort of discovery or nighttime actions that come up. But we'll see how that works out. Then that is the end of the round. We move into night phase. They each get 2 energy normally. Oops. We are at the shelter, so we gain 1 more of those. She spends 1 water to gain 1 more. He spends a water and a food to get 2 more, which is great because it means I get rid of 1 of my diseases. But also because I'm full, I get a minor boon. Let's make him stronger. No. Let's make him more dexterous. And now that is that. We resolve a night phase card. I'll say that it's him doing it this time. Danger champion. Okay, here's one of our champions. This means, I think I called it a challenger before. Champion means I get to choose 1 person to take care of this. Resolve if your hex has wetlands, plains, or forests. We do have plains. In the middle of the night, flitting creatures rustle in the nearby brush, disturbed by something unknown. Someone in my hex must test awareness to listen, +2 if you're alone. We're not alone. He's got a 5, she's got a 5, but then would have to lose her boon, so he's going to take it for 5. We roll 1 die and get a 2 is a 7, which unfortunately looks like bad news for us. Fear gets the better of you and you remain awake all night. Each character in the hex loses all but 2 energy. Ouch. So those go down to 3. She goes down, loses 3, loses 2. They both have 2 energy, and that's the end of the night. Activity +2, and we've got now a sun and a star. So that goes up 1, 2 to 5. Then that does trigger our first event, which says, as your people explore the valley, they find an impressive abundance. Each character in a hex with a river, lake, or wetland gains 1 water. Yay! All right, so we don't have to worry about getting water this round. They both get water. So what I'd like to do is 1 fishing activity to get food for us, and 1 mining activity to hopefully get that sunstone that we need to finish our goal. Doesn't really matter who does which. So we'll start with big guy, go fishing. We draw our card, which this time is a fish for 3, 2 water for 4, or 2 fish for 5. That's cheaper than the last time. And we'll take our river card and put that there. And we are fishing in a river, so remember our bonus is an extra water. We roll 4 dice. 4, 4, 5, 6. This is going to be very nice for me. All right, then I want to make sure that I get the fish. So 5 is black and white. I'm going to put a 6 on the black and white because that could be enough for a double 3 or a 5 or 5 + 1. Then I'm going to put a 5 on the water. Oh, you know what? Let's put a 5 on the cross between the 4 and the 5, the water and the fish. And I'll put 8 up here on the 5 only spot. And we draw the next card, which shows -1 mishap, +3 bonus, +4 bonus. So there's double bonus. Let's see what we did. All right, so white, which is 5, is only needing 4, which we overspent for. The 4 needs the 8, which we can't get. The 3 needs a 3 plus 3 is a 6, which we do have. All right, so it doesn't matter which of these I use for 5, but the other one's not. This is not enough for 4. We'll say that goes away. 8 gets the 5 minus 1 with a mishap, so I get 2 fish from that. And then the 3 plus 3 is a 6, which is this, is a bonus, so we get a fish and a water for that. So we end up with 3 fish and 1 water, which is awesome, because at the end of the turn, he'll keep 2 fish and a water. She gets 1 fish. And that's the end of the fishing. We are good for the next night. And then she's going mining with her 2 energy. Now, in our current space, we've got a chasm, we've got mountains, we've got a cave. And if we look at our mining card again, I can mine in mountains, and I can mine in chasms, and I can mine in caves. So it's going to sort of determine which of the things I'm looking for. Now, all 3 of those have 2 sunstones, so that doesn't change that. But if I, for example, mine in the mountains, then I've got 2 sunstones and 3 of the cloud stones. And that means there's only 2 shapes in the bag, so it's going to be easier for me to figure out which of the 2 I'm pulling. So I'm going to go to the mountains. So we need to add 2 sunstones and 3 cloud stones. So again, we've got 5 of each to pick from. You don't know which one's which. And we're going to do 2 of the sunstones, so I'll just take those 2 and 3 of the cloud stones and put those in the bag. The rest of those go off to the side. And now we're pulling from the bag. I need to make sure I get sunstones again. The sunstone's skinnier and longer than the cloud stone, so it's easy to find. There is one. It is a sun, which is going to be cool because, well, it might be cool, because on our current night card, you will see one of the omens is the sun. Means if we check our mining card, the omen says, if I match, I gain 1 major boost to the determination skill. So I'm going to get a major boost now to my determination, which is great. And you know what? I might as well pull 1 more. Let's look for that other sunstone in here. I think I got it. Should be that one. It is. This time a moon. So the moon does not match our current omens. But with a non-matching moon, it says we're going to gain +1 of that stone. So we're actually going to pick up 3 sunstones from this mining. And the sunstone is actually pretty cool. I might as well put them all out so you can see. But the sunstone requires the sort of bashing stone to activate, but also it gives me that same bashing stone to activate. So I can use 1 sunstone to sort of shape another sunstone, which is kind of cool. But for now, she gets all 3 of those. We're going to have to figure out how everything fits in our bag in a minute. But remember, we can always exchange things between each other. So I'm going to give 1 of those to him. Because if I am careful now, we can fit all of that into her bag. And we now have 1 wood, 1 fiber, 1 sunstone, 1 cloudstone, 1 riverstone. So we finished the gathering resources goal. It says your hard work has paid off and you've gathered several useful resources. Put the vital goal process materials into play. So we are going to move into the night phase right now, but our next goal is triggered. In order to make more advanced tools, you'll have to figure out how to shape, cut, or break down the materials you find into more useful components or into rudimentary tools themselves. You can take the processing action to use any tool icons in your possession to flip material tokens with a corresponding icon. So this goal is completed when we as a group have the following materials: a cloudstone that's shaped, a flaked riverstone, and one woven fiber. But for now we move into the night phase. We both get 2 energy back. Again, we're at the shelter, so we get another one. And we both have food and water to spend. So those go away. And we get 2 energy more each, and we get to heal up something. So I'm going to get rid of an injury and a disease like that. Plus, they're both at 5, so they both get a minor boon. So I'll give him more strength, and I'll give her more strength as well. Then, this fish is going to degrade like that. And we will need to fit everything into our bag to keep it, but that's easy, no problem. Water goes in there. I should have done that before on a previous night phase, and I didn't. I'm sorry. But that's all good. Then, we have to do a night action. They're both in pretty good shape. She's got a lot of boons going, or boosts going, so let's call her the active person. But this is a group anyway. We have to resolve the deadly chill. You wake up shivering as the temperature drops precipitously. Everyone in your hex must test the strength to endure. Add +1 for each of the following you have: clothing, shelter, or fire. We do have shelter, so we're each getting a +1. So he's going to start at 6, +1 is 7, and 3 is 10. So with a 10, he loses 1 energy and gets 1 minor disease. So 1 energy is gone, 1 minor disease. He also loses that boost. She starts at 4, +1 is 5, +1 is 6, and rolls a 2, which puts her in the same category. She loses her boost as well, 1 energy, and gets 1 minor disease. We advance activity by 1, and now we're looking at Moon as our omen that's active. So our activity is at 6. The next trigger happens at 8. Now, we both have water. He has food. We could get more food. The first thing I want to do is process stuff. And in order to do that, I'll let him do it, but I want to send over 1 wood and 1 fiber. Again, this doesn't have to fit in the bag during the day, only during the night phase, so I can give extra stuff to him and we can always send it back to her if needed. But we're going to take a processing action because I need to have a shaped cloudstone, a flaked riverstone, and 1 woven fiber. So we're going to start by spending 1 action, and you'll see we've got a processing reference card. And it does take just 1 action. And now we're going to be able to process as much as we want to. We're going to determine what's available, choose the number of materials to process. Each available icon can only be used once. And we're going to flip the chosen materials from their unprocessed side to the processed side. So right now he has available to him only this bash icon. Actually, you know what? Let's say this before we start. I'm trading 2 over there. He has 2 bash icons. Because with 2 bash icons, he can use this one to bash that one. Sorry, that's not bashing, that's grinding. He can use this one to grind this one, which does that. And now we've got this nice shaped cloudstone. And he can use the other sunstone he has to grind down this sunstone, so now he's got 1 shaped sunstone as well. And you can't do it right now because we can't do a chain of things, but now because he's done that, he has the sort of banging or striking ability. So on the next turn, if he does it again, he can strike this riverstone. And you know what? We might as well. So let me take this other sunstone just because, so we have it. We're going to process 1 more time. So I've got 1, 2, 3 striking ability. 1 and 2 is going to flip over my other 2 sunstones. And I have one, sorry, those were grinding, one striking ability, which is going to flip over my Riverstone. And you'll see now that I've done that to my Riverstone, I also now have that sort of knife or cutting ability. So now at that end of that turn, we're going to pass some stuff back over just because. Make some space over here. Now I don't have fire, so I can't do anything with wood, but only thing else we need is one woven fiber. That takes cutting. We now have the ability to cut with our Riverstone. So I'm going to do one final processing activity, use that cut to then process this vine to its process side here, woven fiber. And doing that, we now have this goal completed because we have a shaped cloudstone, we have a flaked Riverstone, and we have a woven fiber. So we're going to flip that over. And it says, these refined materials will come in useful for crafting items. You'll need their tool icons to process additional materials if necessary. Put the vital goal, make tools, into play. Make tools. Tools, clothing, and perhaps even weapons will facilitate your survival in the valley. You'll have to experiment to discover what can be made with the materials you've found. Now it says you can take the crafting action to combine two materials. This forms a starting color and 4-digit code, which you then look up in the game codex to see if it creates an item. This goal is completed when the characters as a group have any 2 different items. And remembering, when I've completed all of these things, I instantly read outcome 200 as the end of this challenge. So I think what I'm going to do, well, we can see right now crafting is going to take me 1 energy, and I'm allowed to combine 2 things. And then whether or not that successfully makes something, that counts as our action. So we're going to spend 1 action to make 1 attempt at crafting something. But let's see. We've got water and water. He's got food. I'd like to get more food. We haven't gone hunting in a while. She's good at hunting the little stuff. Let's go foraging and see what we can get. All right, so we draw 2 foraging cards. Whoo! And there's the beast in the front already. Now, I'm going to take that one because I don't want to instantly get attacked by the predator. I am shuffling that back into the deck, and we are required to take a second card. So let's cross our fingers that that one doesn't come up again, or we might be in trouble. 2 cards, and good, we didn't. Now, because I do have a bad guy there, or a predator there, I do have to take the 1 card that has the predator. But I am looking for food, so we are going to stop there because I have a pathway that leads to the 2nd level, and we've got 2 little critters there to hunt. So we are going to hunt those 2 critters. And to do that, just checking our reference card one more time, it shows to hunt, we're going to approach with tracks we did. Maximum 3 is prey, we're only attacking 2, plus 1 difficulty per prey. So we are attacking 2, so each of these numbers is going up 1. And it doesn't show what I'm testing here to hunt, which is clearly a misprint. But you'll see on this other hunting for the forest on the other sort of region area, we're testing dexterity to hunt. So I'm going to assume that in this case, hunting is again going to be a dexterity test. She has a 6 dexterity. So we're going to roll. I got a 4. 6 and 4 is 10. 5 plus is successful, plus 1 because we had 2 prey. So that's a 6. We instantly win. 1 meat per prey means I get 2 meat, and then I get 1 bone and 1 hide. So again, from that hunt, we get 2 meat, 1 bone, and 1 hide. So give her 2 meat, 1 bone, and 1 hide, and we'll fit things in as we go. We may need to swap some things around, but we might as well try our first crafting action. Now, I've got bones, I've got hides, I've got sharp tool kind of stuff. She's got 2 actions left, he's got 1 action left. I'm going to try and use the bone as a handle. And I will take this. Now, you know what? let's let him do it, because she can do something big with 2 if she needs to. He'll take the bone as a handle, and this sharp river stone as some kind of tool. Now, if we stand that up like this, yeah? Oh. If I put it at the end like that, we might get something like a spear. And if I get it like that, we might get some kind of like axe-looking tool. It does matter the direction that you're building things in. And so let's go ahead and make this one pointy, because the less pointy things might not work so well as a stabby kind of weapon. So here we're going to look across here. We start with blue, 2, then 2, 4, 1. So blue, 2, 2, 4, 1, and let's see what happens. And again, that takes 1 action to do that. And consulting the codec, blue 2, 2, 4, 1 gets me a riverstone spear. It says, you've made a riverstone spear. A spear is useful for hunting, fishing, and defending yourself. Discard the materials used and gain the riverstone spear item card. That's IT05. And then I'm going to record the recipe in my tribe's journal. So first we will take from our item deck IT05 right here. And you'll see that this card actually has 2 different ways to make it, because if I took this and I read from the other direction, red 1, 4, 2, 2, that's what we've got there. So we do make that by discarding those 2 items, and we've created the Riverstone Spear, which is a hand item, a weapon basically. It says Harvesting Spear Weapon. It is a sharp edge, so we can use this for crafting, or sorry, for processing things moving forward. And it says, when you fight or hunt, you can re-roll 1 die. Also, if the result of that roll is a 6, you've destroyed the spear. So you have to be careful when you're using it. And also when you fish, before placing dice, you can re-roll 1 die. All right, so we will place that down here. Sorry, this forage is done. And that goes into a hand. Each character can hold 2 items in hand. And also I mentioned when making that item that we should record in our journal. The game does come with a journal. Now I'm not sure what the quality is, but I'm sure it's better than this. This is just printed prototype material. Let me show you this journal because I haven't been following up with it, but as we're playing the game, I should be writing the numbers of each tile that we've placed in our map. Any overlays that we place on the map, we should also write in there so we can keep a chronicle of our map, because as we move from challenge to challenge, we will sort of inhabit the same location, the same valley that we've been discovering. Our civilization name, I haven't named the civilization yet, but we can describe it, and as we grow, we're going to be getting new culture, which are basically different abilities that we'll get as we go through. And here's where we're going to track our recipes. So now I could write in here, blue 2241 and red 1422 will get me a Riverstone Spear, and it'll explain what the Riverstone Spear does. So in future games, if I want to build another one of those, I can simply refer here and know exactly how I made it before. Now you'll see here there's an investigation. This doesn't come into the first challenge of this tutorial prototype playthrough, but I want to explain. We've got omens that are active. Right now we've got that moon omen active. And sometimes on some of the components in game, you might see one of those omens on the component. And if you see an omen on a component that matches that active omen at the time, you're going to go into the codex and have some kind of discovery or something happen story-wise in the game. We'll talk more about that in my thoughts, but it's a really interesting way that this game does feel alive because you are actually searching for things in the components as you're playing. And then finally on the end here are challenge titles. This is where I keep track of all of the things that I've gone through, and also it's a way to save the game if we go and come back later. And it also keeps track of all of my people, because throughout gameplay, as we get into further challenges, we are going to grow old and eventually die off, and those sort of characters will become legends, and they'll leave sort of skills behind for future generations. All right, so we have our first craft done. We need to have 2 different items crafted to complete this goal. So I might as well go ahead and craft something else. So I'm going to try, yeah, we have another bone, we might as well use a bone. I'm going to craft with this character, and I'm going to try to make, I don't know. Side by side doesn't seem like it would do much. Although, no. I think that if I stand this up like this, and I place this one on like this, we might create a sort of hammer tool. So let's look at blue 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. So 2, 2, 6, 5, blue. Let's see what happens. All right, so looking in the book, blue 2265 makes a sunstone mallet. It says you've made a sunstone mallet. It can be used to strike and break materials and also used as a hammer to construct buildings and drive tent stakes. It can also be used as a weapon if necessary. So we're going to find IT65 and discard those two materials. So here's card IT65, and you can see again red 5622 would get me the same thing. Flipping that over, we get our sunstone mallet, which is great because that works as grinding and striking. It says when I fight using that strength, I can reroll one die. If it's a 4, 5, or 6, I destroy that. But it does get me the free reroll. It also gives me this hammer symbol. And this hammer symbol will be useful later on. And you'll notice this is not a hand weapon. This is carried in my sort of item bag or my pouch as a small tool. So that gets placed over here. And we can have 3 of those at any time. But now, having completed our second item type, we have completed this goal. And we flip this over. It says you've discovered the means to make some useful items. These and other items you'll discover will be invaluable to your people. While tinkering with materials, you've noticed a helpful pattern. Weapons are often crafted with a vertical handle made of wood or bone, while tools are often crafted with a horizontal handle of wood or bone. There are, of course, some exceptions. Now it says you've completed your last goal. Refer back to your challenge card to see what happens next. So in my challenge card, it says, when you've completed all of your challenges or all your goals, read outcome 200, found in the codex. So we go back into our codex book in the outcomes section, and we find outcome 200, and it says, by finding vital resources, creating tools, and preparing to build a shelter, your people have created a solid foothold in the Vale. But rumors have begun to spread, a vast shadow in the night that swallows the moon, massive footprints in the gathering autumn frost, and strange howls from afar. You are not the valley's only new inhabitant, and discovering the behemoth that stalks the Vale alongside you might be key to your people's survival. Add putting down roots to your looming challenges, which is the next challenge, the next scenario of the game. Then it says at the end of any day phase, I can end the game. When I end this game this way, illustrate the saga of the arrival on the Primal Cave, which is the picture you see right now on the screen, including the arrival mark. And then add the arrival mark to the legend side of each of my character cards. So this is very cool. On the inside cover of the box, we've got this sort of cave wall. And every time we unlock something story-wise like this in the game, we're supposed to sort of illustrate our story that we've accomplished on the wall, making sure to include that icon that you just saw a minute ago. And then also, on the back of each of our character cards, I mentioned as they go through the game, they will eventually get old and die and become legend. So on the legend side of the card, you will also be drawing those icons that each character has achieved on the back of here. Now I'm not going to do that here just because this is just a video for you. I've already played through the game once and I'm not going to finish this second playthrough of the scenario. And now it does tell me that at any point I can choose to end the game at the end of the day phase. So I could right now call this the end of the game. And I will do that just because I don't want to spoil any more of the game. There's a lot of stuff to discover, a lot of cool things to explore in this game. I don't want to show you any more items because in the case that you play this game in the future, I don't want to spoil the different recipes to craft the different items because there are, as you can see, quite a few items even just in the prototype of the game, and I'm sure that the final version of the game will have quite a few more. But I do want to sort of explain a little bit more about what there is that I've seen in the prototype that you aren't going to see on video because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. But let me talk about some of the big things that do get added to the game over the next 2 challenges. And the first thing is the idea of an outpost. Starting at the beginning of the next challenge, you're tasked with creating an outpost. And to do that, you're basically just going to spend 4 energy, but other characters can also spend 1 energy to join you. So it doesn't have to be one person spending 4. One character could spend 3 and another person could spend 1 to reach that 4. And depending on where you build, you are going to need different different tools to build in those areas. So I would need an axe if I want to build over a forest. I'd need this sort of trowel to build over any of the water spaces, or this sort of pickaxe to build over the mountainous spaces. So right now, with what I've got, I couldn't build anything because the only tool symbol I have right now is this hammer. So I would need to find a way to build one of those tools. But then once you've created an outpost, and you can only have 1 in each hex, the outpost is going to sort of become your base of operations. And you're going to then be able to build structures. And the structures are basically going to cost you whatever it shows on the structure card that you want to build. So for example, if I wanted to build the drying racks, I'd need to have my outpost built, and at the outpost, I use 1 energy and I discard whatever resources are listed down here. So in this case, 2 wood or 2 fiber would give me drying racks. And you'll see that some of these structures, like this watchtower here, will require more actions or more energy to do, but will also require those different tools. So here you see that hammer symbol. So I would need a hammer and a trowel here to build this watchtower. And there are a variety of many different kinds of buildings. And these buildings are going to sort of add unique abilities that your characters can do, or unique actions even, depending on which one they are, that your character can do at the outpost. But they also might find ways or create ways to change the outcomes of these sort of nighttime events that are happening or other events that unfold throughout the game. They also might have ways to sort of store your spoiling food so that it doesn't spoil, so you can hold it longer, or capture food so you don't have to use your actions during the day to get food. And there's just a wide variety of different things that you can add to sort of build your civilization and make them more technologically advanced to sort of change up the way the game works moving forward. Another action that you will find starting in the next challenge is something called delving. And that's at any cave or any chasm you can go delving. And basically you're going deep into that chasm or that cave, spending actions and going sort of, it's almost like a choose your own adventure kind of game where, here I might as well show you a few of the cards. You're going to go into these decks like this. This would be shuffled. You'll take out a card and you'll basically go through the story, testing what you need to test. And then after you finish your test, choosing one of the options at the bottom, and then which option you choose at the bottom sort of dictates whether you go to this kind of card or this kind of card, and so on. And then each card is going to present you with new things. And some of them are going to help you find resources. Some of them might hurt you along the way, depending on your skill tests. And once you get certain depth, means past 7 cards deep, you will have to continue spending your action or your energy to continue going further, but you have the chance to find a bunch of stuff down there, but also potentially hurt yourself along the way. But there's also this idea of an exit. And what this means is if you get down and you find an exit, you can actually come back up again in further, or hexes that are further away from where you are. And the way that works is if you find an exit at depth 1 or 2, you can come up in a cave or a chasm in any hex that's adjacent to where you started. 3 to 5 depth, you can exit any cave or chasm that's in the same tray that you are. And if you get down to 6 or further and find an exit, you can come up at any hex that has a cave or a chasm. So this is going to sort of be a fast travel option as well as a way to get deep into the ground to find new resources and new discoveries, because there's going to be other stuff that you find along the way as well. The last thing I do want to quickly show you, and I'm not going to show you the details of this because it would take quite a while to sort of show you how it all plays out and how it all works. But you did just see in that final story blurb about this scenario that there is a behemoth sort of stalking the land, basically. And those behemoths will come out. They come out in the 3rd challenge in this prototype. And there are 2 behemoths included with this game, or with this prototype, sorry. And that's this sort of giant I don't know, slug, worm-looking thing, and this giant sort of rock monster. And the way that these work is they sort of wander the land looking for a specific type of tile or some kind of special condition. And if you end up in a hex with one of them at the end of the night, you're going to encounter them and trigger some kind of story. And then based on the goals that are associated with that specific behemoth, you're going to have to do specific things in order to sort of beat the behemoth or learn about the behemoth and so on. They do have sort of a secret and habits that you can sort of get through certain events or certain skill tests to learn more about their habits and their secrets to sort of make it easier to deal with the behemoth in some unique way. And each of these behemoths are going to have different secrets and different habits, and even the same one has multiple cards that you can shuffle up, so each time you play it they may actually be different than the time before. And they do have a sort of AI deck about what kind of encounters you have when you see them and which direction they're moving or how far they can move to get to where they want to go and so on. So it is this really cool sort of living character that's in the world that you're interacting with. I will talk more about that in my final thoughts. I just wanted to let you know that it is here in the game. One more thing that was supposed to be in that final blurb at the end of the first challenge is that starting in this second challenge, your mantles are going to be getting secret or special abilities. So here are the Mantle of the Seeker and Mantle of the Storyteller tiles. And these are going to slot into these spaces here on the player board. And you'll see, for example, the Storyteller says he's a friend guide. So I can spend 1 energy to choose another character in my hex and let that character gain 1 major boost to either of those skills. And I can only do that once per round. And the other one, the secret character that we were using, has Prey Stalker, which says when I begin foraging, instead of drawing 2 forage cards and choosing one, I can draw until a card with animal tracks is drawn, and then shuffle everything back and continue as normal. So that means that they know that they can get further in, because remember those hunting activities, when I did hunt those little creatures, I did need to have 1 path in the front to get to them to hunt. So this sort of automatically does that, so I can guarantee a hunt every time I go foraging, which is cool because it means that I can probably get meat every time. So that's really cool. These characters all have unique abilities. Let me show you the other 2 just so you can see what makes the other 2 special. The other 2 mantles are the Mystic and the Wanderer. I might as well show you the cards because the artwork in this game is beautiful, and that's something I haven't talked about yet, but I love the way everything looks in this game. Those are the other 2. And the Wanderer is going to get this Secret Finder ability, which lets you spend 1 energy to resolve a discovery card without moving and add +2 to your test. So you can discover and get through all kinds of cool challenges to get you new stuff. And the Mystic over here has Sky Shaker, and she can simply spend 1 energy to instantly gain a minor boost based on whatever the omen is at that time. So she can sort of constantly be powering herself up in different ways as she plays through. So that's basically all I have to say about the game itself as far as what the components are and what the different kinds of things you can do, at least in the prototype. But let me talk quickly about the components. Now, granted, this is all prototype, so I can't say anything. I mean, these are sort of handmade with little brads, and the instruction books are just pieces of paper. But what I see here is beautiful. The artwork on these sort of characters is wonderful. Now, the minis I can't really comment on because, as I said, they're printed out with regular 3D printing material, so they are brittle. They're not great, but the design of the minis looks great. The design of the characters is wonderful. The artwork, I mean, a lot of the cards are just text, but the artwork on the cards is gorgeous. I mean, when you go hunting, everything just looks really nicely illustrated. The design of the way the world works, all of the iconography makes sense. The omen symbols are very clear and easy to understand. If I have any complaints at all, it's that sometimes the resources are a little bit hard to identify as far as the names of the resources. Like wood is obviously wood and bone is obviously bone, but then you've got things that are like shell and tooth. And you can tell because one's big and one's small. But the difference between these 2 symbols is not huge. right? The same thing with, this is big and small, so again, it's easy to figure out once you understand, but the difference between a bone and a tendon is a little bit tricky to figure out. And also, you saw me mix it up a couple times in this playthrough, but to remembering the sunstone and the cloudstone and the riverstone, and I don't even remember what the fourth one is, remembering the names of those things is going to be important, because you do need to know those names when you're looking at the structures and it says you need to have a woven fiber. When it looks like a vine, I'm assuming that's a fiber. So there's just some vocabulary that you sort of have to learn as you go through. Now again, all of those different stones do have all of those names, and it looks like the fourth one I couldn't remember is clay, but these are all printed here. The reference cards in this game, and I'm guessing there are probably a little bit more in the full version of the game, but they are really good. So while that vocabulary is something you need to remember, it is definitely something you get into as you play, and it does start to make more sense. But again, you will have to refer to some things along the way. All that said, meet me back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. Again, I didn't want to spoil too much of this game, so I didn't dive into any of the sort of more interesting later challenges. You did sort of just get to see a tutorial of how the sort of basic game plays out. But I do want you to be able to explore this as much as you can, because that exploration and discovery is really such a large piece of this game. But I hope that the playthrough did give you a good idea of what kind of game this is and how this game generally plays out. So let's talk about my thoughts on this game. Now, I do want to preface this by saying I am not generally a huge fan of open world gaming, and I'm not even the biggest fan of sort of survival crafting style kinds of games, but I do love big narrative adventure style games, and that was the piece of this game that stood out to me and was the reason ultimately that I wanted to check this game out. Also because I'm a really big fan of Stars of Ikarios. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here on the shelf behind me. I've only played through a little bit of it, but I'm really loving all of that. And I was also pretty intrigued by what I saw of Mythwind when it was crowdfunded. So I was interested both in this publisher as a publisher and also this idea of a sort of sprawling adventure game that plays out over time. And I wanted to find out more about it, so I offered to do some preview coverage of this game. And boy, am I glad that I did, because I have to say, any sort of reservations I have about open world gaming and sort of the lack of sort of direction and what to do, and any sort of feeling I had about survival games being more about dealing with mechanisms to keep the game chugging along and not really loving crafting because it takes too much work, all of those reservations are gone. This game, it's early to say it because the 2023 just started, but this game could easily be my favorite game of all of the games I'm going to cover in 2023, and it's almost definitely going to make it onto a favorite games list like of all time at some point in the future. And of course, this is very early to say this because this is a preview. I've only seen 3 challenges, means 3 scenarios of a prototype copy of the game. I have no idea how this is going to expand or grow or continue or what the game is going to look like after I get past this sort of introduction. But from what I've seen, I am incredibly excited about this game. And let me do my best to sort of walk you through all of the things that I love about this game. First off, the open world nature of a game generally to me feels like, here's a sandbox, go play and do what you want to do. And that is here, but I never once in this game felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And that's because the challenges set up a really good sort of overarching narrative theme of whatever that game is that you're playing at that time. Now, granted, the one you saw was just sort of, welcome to the world, let's figure out how the world works. But moving forward, the second challenge is all about building the outpost and developing your society. The third challenge is all about finding out about the behemoth and figuring out what to do about the behemoth. And these overarching stories are interesting. But then on top of that, you've got all of these smaller goals underneath that is really sort of driving what it is that you're doing at any given time. So yes, you can do absolutely anything you want to, but there's always a goal that you need to accomplish, and there's always this ticking timer of the challenge that if you're not working towards this at least part of the time, it is going to end anyway, and something's going to happen. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's going to continue moving. The world is moving whether you are or not, and I really love that because that's how the real world works. In the real world, I can do whatever I want to, but if I don't do certain things by certain times, then that's too bad, I can't do them anymore. And I love to see that happening in a game like this. And those goals, you didn't get to see it in this, but once we get into the second challenge of this prototype, there are goals that are directly connected to that challenge, like all of the goals were in the one that we just did, but also you get what's called epic goals. And the epochs, or sorry, epic, epoch, however pronounced, but epoch goals, that sort of are longer lasting goals that continue over multiple games. And if I don't finish it within this challenge, I can continue to try that in future challenges. So there's this definite sort of background stuff that I can do to learn more about my world. And then there's these sort of more focused things that I need to do right now to sort of accomplish what needs to be done now. So there's this balance of how do I get the stuff done that I need to get done, and how much of this other stuff can I play with at the same time in the background. But meanwhile, while I'm doing all of this stuff, I am living a life of these characters. Means I need to feed, I need to drink water, and in order to do that, I need to go gather water, I need to go gather resources, I need to forage for resources, hunt for meat, fish for fish, and do all of this stuff just to make sure that my characters aren't dying of illness or injury along the way. I have to explore to find new locations to do these things that I need to do. And it's all of these things together that makes this game just have so much life. There's just constant stuff going on. There's constant life to this game, and it really does feel like I'm playing these 2 characters, or 4 characters if you're playing the full set, in this living world. And it's not just a matter of the small things that I showed you in the tutorial, and we will talk about each of those small things, but it's also just a matter of the world. A lot of those cards you saw me turn over at night or turn over during this discovery phase introduce new things that aren't just the base core mechanisms of the game. And a lot of the times you saw, if you have lore, spend lore to check this thing in the codex. And when you do that, real things happen in the world around you. Real things change. You learn things, you develop things, you grow as a society, and the world just continues to expand with this great narrative that isn't just a continuing story, because it is open world, it is sandbox. Each person playing through this is going to discover different things and at different times in their journey through the game. And it just grows. But it's all naturally grown because things are building off of other things that have already been done. And despite the fact that there's not necessarily one sort of through path narrative through the story, there are these branches, but each branch connects to whatever came before in such a meaningful way that it really does feel like I'm in a living world playing through it. And that's like the best thing I can say about a game like this, for me at least, because it just pulls me back in. I want to play more because I want to see what I'm going to find next time. I want to know what's going to happen when I turn over the next card, when I turn over the next tile, when I do that new action that I've never done before, when I build a building and then turn over a tile or a card that might somehow refer to that building, when I find one of those omen symbols on a card, on a tile, that somehow triggers something in the brain of the people that I'm playing as in this game. It's wonderful. And then we've got this sort of chronology in this journal that we're keeping. Now in the prototype, I didn't get to play the next generation, but this idea that this is continuing from epoch to epoch, and characters are going to die off and become legends and somehow sort of give their skills and give their knowledge on to the next generation that's going to continue progressing. And I can't wait to see how this game grows, because I did hear that yes, this prototype is sort of straightforward. You do this challenge, then you do this challenge, then you do this challenge. Once you get into the sort of bigger game, it's not going to necessarily be like that. You're going to sort of branch off and do what you do, and the challenges that you do are going to sort of open up other challenges that you can then get to, and the narrative will sort of grow in its own sort of natural expanding way. And that makes me very, very excited to see what comes of this game. And then we talk about all the mini games in this game. There's fishing, there's foraging, there's crafting, there's mining, there's delving, there's the behemoth. I want to talk about those. I love what this game is doing, because everything I do, aside from gathering water or building a shelter, which is just spend an action and do it, everything else takes something. The fishing game, this sort of press your luck dice rolling, dice assignment game where I'm trying my best not to get hurt by the thing that I need to get done, but also trying to get as many resources out of that I can based on my dice rolls. And that's a fun game on its own. And then you start building tools. Like you saw the spear now. The spear I get lets me re-roll once. So now I can push a little further and try a little harder with my fishing to get more stuff. And it's usually fish or water, but sometimes I pick up some other resources. Sometimes I might even discover something else fun underneath the water. And even just in this small little mini game, there's a lot going on. Foraging, same thing. Again, a little bit of press your luck. Do I get attacked by the predator? Can I search for more stuff? Is it worth it for me to be out in danger searching for more stuff that's going to help me later, while all the time I know that there's something out there that's sort of hunting me? But once I get strong enough, once I have enough tools, enough weapons, I don't care so much about that predator anymore, because now I can fight back and then I get stuff for beating the predator. This idea is just, it feels so alive and so real, and it's a lot of fun. Do I quit out early to get what I need and just go? Do I push further to get more stuff and risk the danger? It's a lot of fun. It's an interesting little puzzle, but it plays out quickly and it feels like I'm doing what I'm actually doing. The mining, same thing, right? I'm going looking for resources that I need. And the fact that each of those resources is a different shape, I can't see what I'm picking, but I can pretty much feel. Some of them feel similar to other ones. But then once I've drawn the thing, hopefully getting what I thought I was getting, they've got this sort of icon on the back, the omen icon on the back. And then depending on where I am in the game, that's going to trigger different things. And I really, really like that, because it means that every time I mine, it's going to get a little bit different. The results are going to change a little bit. I'll always get the resources I need, but something happens while I'm doing that. That could be happening in real life. If I was mining, maybe I fall and I hurt my ankle. Maybe I get bitten by something while I'm down in the caves. All of this kind of stuff is happening sort of organically based on these omen symbols that are changing every turn. And it just really feels great. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the delving, because that is my sort of least favorite of all of these mini games, simply because it doesn't feel all that exciting as far as the mechanics of how it works. It's cool because it lets you do fast travel sometimes. You can get far across the board. Now in the prototype, my world is pretty small, so that wasn't hugely necessary, but that is an interesting idea that exists, that by going down into these caves, I can potentially come up somewhere else. And I think that's cool. The sort of choose your own adventure style, left or right idea, that you can sort of tell what kind of room you're going into based on, is it cold, is it hot, does it smell funny, do you hear sounds? And that's the kind of thing that you might be following through. So narratively it makes a whole lot of sense, but otherwise it's sort of go to a room, roll dice and see what happens kind of thing. And it's not as exciting or as fun mechanically as the other things. Now that said, it's definitely something I would do when playing, because I could get a bunch of resources from it. I could end up fast traveling from it, and I guarantee there's lots of hidden secrets and surprises, because that's a fat deck, and you're going to have things where you can spend lore, or things that if you have an item, then you might be able to do something special. I guarantee there's going to be a lot of exploration that happens in the delving, and I'm excited at least about that piece of it. Now, processing and crafting. This is probably the biggest single piece of fun outside of the narrative piece that is in this game. You saw that huge deck of cards that I've got that are items. And that huge deck of cards that are items is what they've given me in the prototype. So I can only imagine what's going to be in the actual game. And this idea that crafting is actually crafting. They've come up with this really cool system that I have to think physically, how would I put these things together in the real world to make something that might be useful for me? Maybe I put a pelt over my back and take a piece of fiber around my waist, and now I've got some clothing. Maybe I take a piece of fiber or one of those vines and a tooth and hang that tooth on the fiber, and now I've made a necklace. Maybe I take a stone and stick it on a stick, and I got a hammer. Maybe I pick a pointy stone and stick it on a stick, and now I got a spear. Thinking about not just which items to put together, but also spatially, how do I rotate this thing and the best way to put those things together to make something new is really cool. And the fact that sometimes I just slam things together and nothing happens, and I've wasted the time and the energy of crafting even though it didn't work, it's a really, really cool system that physically works the way that it should work, and also leads to these really great moments of discovery where like, ooh, I put this and this together. I never thought that was going to happen, but look what I just made. And now I've got this really cool tool or this really cool weapon that gives me some kind of ability or gives me protection from the weather or whatever it is. crafting is a ton of fun. And the fact that whether you use an item pre-processed or post-processed, and that you have to find certain items to process things better, changing up the things that you're making is another step that makes it even more interesting, because that's the way things work in the real world, right? If I have a piece of wood that I've carved into a specific shape, it's going to work much better as a tool than just a stick that I picked up off the ground. But also that as we're building these tools then make it easier to process things for future building. And then once we've built our outposts, that these tools help us to build giant structures that give us further abilities and give us further, storage for food or the ability to fight off intruders. And these kinds of things really just makes this world feel like I am in it, and I love it. Now, the last thing is the behemoth. I don't want to talk too much about it because that's another sort of cool exploration, story growth piece of this game. But this idea that there are these massive monsters living in the world that you are, and that you interact them with in unique ways. It's not just, here comes a monster, roll a die to fight, or here comes a monster, roll a die to hide. Each AI card, or each card that you're turning over from that behemoth, interacts with the behemoth in a unique way, testing specific skills that matches the story of that behemoth, and then that each behemoth has a sort of hidden habits that you can sort of learn by watching them, or that these behemoths happen to have a secret that if you find out might tell you something about the behemoth, and the way that you interact with it is going to change completely. And the way that you find these habits and these secrets is by spending those lore tokens. And something I didn't mention is that as the behemoth is moving around the map, it's basically dropping lore tokens. So this is forcing you to move around the map, collecting the lore, sort of following the behemoth, learning more about it, trying to figure out its habits, trying to find out some kind of secret about it, and ultimately dealing with the behemoth in a unique way. And that was just, again, in the prototype. So I can only imagine the different ways that this world is going to grow and change and evolve, and what other new things we're going to discover in this world. I am incredibly excited to dive into this more. If you are a fan of survival games, if you are a fan of crafting games, and more importantly, if you're a fan of expansive open world adventure, narrative story kind of games, I strongly recommend you give this one a look. It will be hitting Kickstarter. I'll put the Kickstarter link down below. Definitely, this is a strong recommend for me, at least to go and check out the campaign, because I'm having a ton of fun with this one. I cannot wait to see more. That's basically all I can say. Big 2 thumbs up from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.